They were pushing things in ways that the public didn't like, at least enough swing voters was a very close election, but to turn the election around. And I'm hoping that the Trump administration realizes that they may be overplaying their hand too.
Now, film and TV writers have held a free speech demonstration in New York to protest against the suspension of the talk show host Jimmy Kimmel. The head of the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr, is also facing criticism for threats made to broadcast networks, warning that they may lose their licenses. And the FCC has an unlikely critic, Republican Senator and Trump ally Ted Cruz.
I like Brendan Carr, but what he said there is dangerous as hell. He threatens explicitly, we're going to cancel ABC's license. We're going to take him off the air so ABC cannot broadcast anymore. He threatens it. He says, we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. And I got to say, that's right out of Goodfellas. That's right out of a mafioso coming into a bar going, nice bar you have here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
Well, that is Republican Senator and Trump ally Ted Cruz. Let's speak to Eugene Volokh, who is an expert on First Amendment law at the UCLA School of Law in Los Angeles. Morning to you, Eugene.
Good morning.
First of all, what do you make of what you've observed happening over the last few days? And not just the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel, but the discussion and the heat around it.
Well, a lot of people were very upset, obviously, at the murder of Charles Kirk, in part because he was murdered apparently for his views and because he publicly spoke out. That's very, very bad for democracy. Unfortunately, I think the pushback has also been bad for democracy, as people have been restricted by the government because of their speech. There have been some students, for example, apparently expelled or suspended at universities, some university professors as well. And most recently, there's been this pressure imposed by the FCC chair, this apparent threat, pressuring or trying to pressure ABC into suspending Jimmy Kimmel. I think Ted Cruz has this one right. That's not the way that things are done under the First Amendment, or the way that things should be done under the First Amendment.
Well, I wanted to ask you that. So you think this goes against the First Amendment, this action?
Yes, that's right. And interestingly, the most important case on this was a precedent set last year by the National Rifle Association, the pro-gun rights group. I was actually a lawyer for the NRA in that case. And there, the New York government, which is quite a liberal state government, was trying to pressure entities to try to cut off business relationships, so pressure insurance companies and such to cut off business relationships with the NRA to make it harder for the NRA to engage in its political activity. And the Supreme Court unanimously said that if that could be proved, that would be a First Amendment violation. Likewise, when the FCC is trying to pressure a network into canceling or suspending a show in order to suppress the message being conveyed by the show, that too violates the First Amendment. And it's pretty common in First Amendment law in the US, of course, that precedents set by conservative groups help liberal groups, precedents set by liberal groups help conservative groups. That's one reason, actually, that one thing that Ted Cruz pointed out is that if the FCC is found to have the power to do this, if that kind of precedent is set, that's going to be bad for conservatives in the future and not just liberals.
I mean, the Federal Communications Commission head is Brendan Carr, and of course he was appointed by Trump. So do you see this as very a politically motivated move? Because of course Trump said on Air Force One on his way back from the state visit here in the UK, Jimmy Kimmel was axed because of ratings. It was anything to do with free speech.
Well, last I checked, we were a democracy, and in democracy, politicians act for political reasons. That is very common. Lots of things are politically motivated. The real question isn't whether it's politically motivated. The real question is whether it violates the law and violates people's free speech rights. And it seems to me in this kind of situation, it does. And I'm sorry, you were about to say
I was just going to say, so could there be legal challenges?
Well, so here's the problem. ABC, which was the network that was being pressured by the FCC, apparently either gave in to the FCC or had its own business reasons for doing whatever it did. In any case, it's not going to sue the FCC. Jimmy Kimmel, in theory, might be able to sue the FCC. There are complicated legal questions here, but it practically is a business matter. If you're a businessman in Hollywood, and Jimmy Kimmel, before anything else, is a businessman, you have to be when you're at that level, you're probably not going to want to even sue the government in a way that might reflect badly on your bosses, might expose maybe some embarrassing things and the like. Not if you want to keep working in Hollywood, which I think he does. So regrettably, I don't think that there would be much of a legal challenge here. It's too bad because, again, the attempt to pressure networks this way is improper. One thing that I think we saw in the last election is the Democrats were in power and they overplayed their hand. Especially or including on sort of culture war matters. They were pushing things in ways that the public didn't like, at least enough swing voters was a very close election, but to turn the election around. And I'm hoping that the Trump administration realizes that they may be overplaying their hand too, and that they're going to face political retaliation. Both from the left, but also from the center, and maybe from some people on the right, like Ted Cruz, or people who would otherwise sympathize with the administration by saying this is going too far. So the main checks on this kind of thing in a democracy are political. There are sometimes legal checks, but the main checks are political.
There is somewhat an irony here, isn't there, that free speech advocates are calling for things to be shut down because it goes against their view of the world.
There are many ironies. There are people who said we're conservative, so we're in favor of free speech, and and now they're turning around trying to suppress speech. At the same time, there were people who worked pretty hard to get people fired for allegedly racist statements or allegedly sexist or anti-gay or anti-trans statements, often ones that weren't on the air, that were just in perhaps private conversations or other such things, and said this isn't cancel culture, it's consequence culture. You just have to face the consequences for people disapproving of what you're saying. Now get very, very upset at this. I mean, there are distinctions. I do think the government action here is particularly bad. But yes, the sad fact is human beings are generally pretty keen on restricting speech they disagree with. And there are lots of people who aren't terribly principled on such matters. There are principled free speech supporters on the left and on the right. Ted Cruz, I think, has shown himself to be such. There are people who just want to suppress the other side's speech on the left and on the right. Human nature, a very unpleasant feature of human nature, but there it is.
Really good to speak to you. Thank you so much for coming on, and I appreciate you staying up late in LA. That's Eugene Volokh, who is an expert on First Amendment law at the UCLA School of Law in Los Angeles.